Below is a curated list of 30 distinct, scenario-based interview questions commonly asked in Salesforce Configure, Price, Quote, CPQ, interviews, along with detailed and informative answers. These questions reflect real-world challenges faced by CPQ specialists, consultants, or developers, covering key areas such as product configuration, pricing rules, quote generation, and integrations. Some curveball questions, prefixed with curveball question, are included to simulate high-stakes, unpredictable scenarios. Each answer is structured to provide clarity and depth. 1. Scenario: a client reports that a discount is not applying correctly to a quote in Salesforce CPQ. How would you investigate and resolve this issue? Answer: to investigate a discount not applying correctly in Salesforce CPQ, I would follow a systematic approach to identify and resolve the issue. A. Review price rules. I would check the price rules in Salesforce CPQ to ensure the discount conditions, for example, quantity, product, or customer criteria, are correctly defined and active. B. Validate discount schedules. I would verify if a discount schedule is linked to the product or quote line and confirm the discount tier aligns with the quote's parameters. C. Check quote line data. I would examine the quote line fields, for example, quantity, product family, to ensure they meet the rules conditions, using the quote line editor. D. Test in sandbox. I would replicate the issue in a sandbox environment to test the rules behavior and adjust configurations if needed. E. Monitor logs. Would use the CPQ calculator logs to trace pricing calculations and identify errors. After resolving the issue, I would validate the fix with test quotes and communicate the resolution to the client, ensuring accurate discount application. 2. Scenario: a sales rep is unable to add a specific product to a quote due to configuration errors. How would you troubleshoot this? Answer: to troubleshoot a sales representative's inability to add a product to a quote due to configuration errors, I would proceed methodically. I would check the product rules, for example, validation, selection, or filter rules, to ensure the product is not restricted by conditions like dependencies or exclusions. I would verify the product's availability in the price book and confirm it is active for the quote's currency and region. I would review the product's configuration attributes in the product catalog to ensure all required fields are correctly set. Using a sandbox, I would simulate the issue to test rule behavior and make necessary adjustments. If the issue persists, I would check for error messages in the quote line editor and CPQ logs. After resolving the issue, I would document the fix and train the sales representative, ensuring seamless product addition. 3. Scenario: a client wants to implement a bundle with mandatory products that cannot be removed. How would you configure this in Salesforce CPQ? Answer: to configure a bundle with mandatory products in Salesforce CPQ, I would ensure the products cannot be removed during quoting. A. Create product bundle. I would define the bundle in the product catalog, grouping the mandatory products as product options. B. Set required flag. I would mark each mandatory product as required in the product options settings to prevent removal by sales representatives. C. Apply selection rules. I would configure selection rules to automatically include these products when the bundle is selected, ensuring consistency. D. Test configuration. I would test the bundle in a sandbox to confirm that mandatory products are locked in the quote line editor. E. User training. Would train sales representatives on the bundle's behavior to ensure smooth adoption. This setup ensures the bundle's integrity while aligning with the client's requirements. 4. Scenario: during testing, a quote calculation takes too long, causing delays for sales reps. How would you optimize performance? Answer: to optimize slow quote calculations in Salesforce CPQ, I would focus on improving performance. I would review the price rules and summary variables to identify complex calculations or excessive conditions that may cause delays. I would enable asynchronous calculations by deselecting the Calculate Immediately option in the CPQ package settings to reduce timeout issues. I would optimize product rules by simplifying conditions and reducing lookup queries. Using the CPQ calculator logs, would analyze calculation times to pinpoint bottlenecks. In a sandbox, I would test optimized rules and monitor performance improvements. Finally, I would ensure the system has adequate resources by consulting with the IT team, ensuring faster quote processing for sales representatives. 5. Scenario: a client requires a custom pricing model based on customer tier, for example, gold, silver. How would you implement this in Salesforce CPQ? Answer: to implement a custom pricing model based on customer tier in Salesforce CPQ, I would design a flexible solution. A. Define customer tiers. I would create a custom field on the account object to store the tier, for example, gold, silver. B. Configure price rules. I would set up price rules to apply tier-specific pricing, using conditions to check the account's tier field and adjust the quote line's price or discount. C. Use price books. Would create separate price books for each tier if fixed prices are needed, linking them to the appropriate accounts. D. Test in sandbox. I would test the pricing model in a sandbox to ensure accurate price application across tiers. E. Monitor post-deployment. I would use CPQ logs to verify pricing accuracy post-deployment. This approach ensures tailored pricing while maintaining scalability. 6. Scenario: a sales rep reports that a quote's pricing does not reflect the correct currency for an international client. How would you resolve this? Answer: to resolve a quote's incorrect currency in Salesforce CPQ, I would ensure accurate currency handling. I would verify the account's default currency in Salesforce and ensure it aligns with the client's region. I would check the price book assigned to the quote, confirming it supports the correct currency. I would configure multi-currency settings in Salesforce CPQ, enabling automatic conversion rates based on Salesforce's currency management. In a sandbox, I would test quote generation to validate currency application. If issues persist, I would review CPQ logs for errors in currency conversion. After resolving the issue, I would train sales representatives on selecting the correct price book, ensuring accurate pricing for international clients. 7. Scenario: a client wants to automate approvals for quotes exceeding a specific discount threshold. How would you set this up? Answer: to automate approvals for quotes exceeding a specific discount threshold in Salesforce CPQ, I would configure a robust approval process. A. Define approval rule. I would create an approval rule in CPQ, setting conditions to trigger approval when the discount exceeds the threshold, for example, 20%. B. Configure approval workflow. I would define the approval chain, specifying approvers, for example, sales manager, and notification settings. C. Set alert rules. I would implement alert rules to notify sales representatives when a quote requires approval, guiding them on next steps. D. Test in sandbox. I would test the approval process in a sandbox to ensure proper routing and notifications. E. Monitor usage. I would use CPQ logs to track approval performance post-deployment. This setup ensures compliance with discount policies and streamlines approvals. 8. Scenario: during a quote amendment, the renewal opportunity does not reflect updated product quantities. How would you address this? Answer: to address a renewal opportunity not reflecting updated product quantities during a quote amendment, I would investigate the synchronization process. I would verify if the renewal quoted checkbox on the contract is set to true, as Salesforce CPQ does not automatically update renewal opportunities once a renewal quote is generated. I would manually update the renewal opportunity to reflect the amended quantities. To prevent future issues, I would create a custom automation, for example, Flow or Apex trigger, to sync amendments with renewal opportunities. I would test the solution in a sandbox to ensure accuracy. Post-resolution, I would document the process and train the team, ensuring consistent opportunity updates. 9. Scenario: a client wants to integrate Salesforce CPQ with DocuSign for electronic signatures. How would you configure this? Answer: to integrate Salesforce CPQ with DocuSign for electronic signatures, I would ensure seamless functionality. A. Install DocuSign package. I would install the DocuSign for Salesforce package from the AppExchange and configure API access. B. Configure CPQ quote template. I would add a DocuSign button to the quote template, linking it to the quote document generation process. C. Setup mapping. I would map CPQ quote fields to DocuSign fields to populate recipient and document details automatically. D. Test integration. Would test the integration in a sandbox, generating quotes and sending them for e-signature to validate functionality. E. User training. Would train sales representatives on initiating e-signatures from CPQ. This setup streamlines the signing process and enhances efficiency. 10. Scenario. Users report that a product bundle's pricing is incorrect during quoting. How would you diagnose and fix this? Answer. To diagnose incorrect pricing in a product bundle, I would follow a structured approach. I would review the bundle's configuration in the product catalog, ensuring all product options and pricing methods, for example, list, block, are correctly defined. I would check price rules and discount schedules to confirm they apply correctly to the bundle. I would use CPQ calculator logs to trace pricing calculations and identify errors. In a sandbox, I would replicate the issue and test adjustments to rules or configurations. After fixing the issue, I would validate the bundle's pricing with test quotes and train users to ensure correct usage, preventing future discrepancies. 11. Curveball question. Scenario. A client insists on using a legacy pricing spreadsheet instead of CPQ's pricing engine. How would you convince them to adopt CPQ's pricing features? Answer. To convince a client to adopt Salesforce CPQ's pricing engine over a legacy spreadsheet, I would demonstrate its value while addressing their concerns. I would highlight how CPQ automates pricing calculations, reducing errors and manual effort compared to spreadsheets. I would showcase real-time pricing updates and multi-currency support, which spreadsheets cannot efficiently handle. During a demo, I would replicate their spreadsheet logic in CPQ using price rules and price books, showing equivalent results with greater scalability. I would emphasize CPQ's integration with Salesforce CRM for streamlined workflows. By quantifying time savings and error reduction, would align CPQ's benefits with their business goals, encouraging adoption. 12. Scenario. A client needs a quote template customized to include specific branding and terms. How would you configure this? Answer. To customize a quote template in Salesforce CPQ for specific branding and terms, I would ensure a professional and tailored output. A. Create custom template. I would navigate to the quote template setup and create a new custom template using the Lightning component framework. B. Add branding. Would incorporate the client's logo, fonts, and colors into the template's CSS and HTML sections. C. Include terms. I would add dynamic quote terms fields to display specific terms and conditions based on the quote's attributes. D. Test output. I would generate test quotes in a sandbox to validate the template's appearance and functionality. E. Share template. I would share the template with relevant users via permission sets. This ensures a branded, compliant quote document. 13. Scenario. A sales rep reports that a product option is unavailable in a bundle despite being active. How would you troubleshoot this? Answer. To troubleshoot an unavailable product option in a bundle, I would investigate configuration settings. I would check the product option settings in the product catalog to ensure the option is active and linked to the bundle. I would review filter rules or option constraints that might hide the option based on conditions, for example, product dependencies. I would verify the price book to confirm the option's availability for the quote's currency. Using a sandbox, I would test the bundle configuration to replicate the issue and adjust rules as needed. After resolving the issue, I would document the fix and train the sales representative, ensuring all options are accessible. 14. Scenario. A client wants to apply tiered pricing based on quantity ranges. How would you configure this in Salesforce CPQ? Answer. To configure tiered pricing based on quantity ranges in Salesforce CPQ, I would use block pricing. A. Define block pricing. I would set up a block price record for the product, specifying price tiers, for example, 1 to 50 units at $20, 51 to 100 units at $15. B. Link to product. I would associate the block price with the product in the price book. C. Test pricing. Would create test quotes in a sandbox with varying quantities to validate the tiered pricing logic. D. Apply discounts. If needed, I would add a discount schedule for additional savings on higher tiers. E. Monitor logs. Would use CPQ logs to ensure accurate price calculations. This setup ensures flexible, quantity-based pricing. 15. Scenario. A client's multi-currency quotes show inconsistent pricing across regions. How would you ensure consistency? Answer. To ensure consistent pricing for multi-currency quotes in Salesforce CPQ, I would streamline currency handling. I would configure Salesforce's multi-currency settings, ensuring accurate exchange rates are maintained. I would create region-specific price books with prices in local currencies, linked to the appropriate accounts. I would use price rules to adjust pricing dynamically based on currency or region-specific conditions. In a sandbox, I would test quotes across multiple currencies to validate consistency. I would also monitor CPQ logs for currency-related errors post-deployment. Finally, I would train sales representatives on selecting the correct price book, ensuring uniform pricing across regions. 16. Scenario. A client wants to enforce a minimum quantity for a product in a quote. How would you configure this? Answer. To enforce a minimum quantity for a product in Salesforce CPQ, I would use validation rules. I would create a product validation rule with a condition to check if the quote line's quantity is below the minimum, for example, 10 units. If the condition is met, the rule would display an error message preventing the quote from saving. I would test the rule in a sandbox to ensure it triggers correctly. Additionally, I would configure an alert rule to guide sales representatives on the minimum quantity requirement. After deployment, I would monitor CPQ logs to confirm rule enforcement, ensuring compliance with the client's requirements. 17. Scenario. A client needs to integrate Salesforce CPQ with an external ERP system. How would you approach this? Answer. To integrate Salesforce CPQ with an external ERP system, I would ensure seamless data flow. A. Assess requirements. I would collaborate with stakeholders to define data mappings, for example, quotes, orders, between CPQ and the ERP. B. Use middleware. I would leverage middleware like MuleSoft or custom APIs to facilitate integration, ensuring secure data transfer. C. Configure CPQ. I would set up CPQ to send quote and order data to the ERP via API calls or batch jobs. D. Test integration. Would test the integration in a sandbox, validating data accuracy and error handling. E. Monitor post-deployment. I would use CPQ logs and ERP logs to monitor integration performance. This ensures accurate data synchronization and operational efficiency. 18. Scenario. During testing, a quote line group does not display correctly in the quote document. How would you fix this? Answer. To fix a quote line group not displaying correctly in the quote document, I would investigate the template configuration. I would review the quote template sections to ensure the quote line group is properly mapped to a template section. I would verify the group by field settings in the quote line editor to confirm correct grouping logic. Using a sandbox, I would generate test quotes to replicate the issue and adjust the template or grouping settings. If needed, I would customize the template using HTML or CSS to enhance display. After resolving the issue, I would validate the document output and train users, ensuring accurate presentation. 19. Scenario. A client wants to apply a promotional discount for the first month of a subscription. How would you configure this? Answer. To apply a promotional discount for the first month of a subscription in Salesforce CPQ, I would use a term-based discount schedule. A. Create discount schedule. I would define a discount schedule with a term condition, for example, 20% discount for the first month. B. Link to product. I would associate the schedule with the subscription product in the price book. C. Configure term. I would set the subscription term to reflect the promotional period and regular pricing thereafter. D. Test in sandbox. I would generate test quotes to validate the discount application for the first month. E. Monitor logs. Would use CPQ logs to ensure accurate calculations. This ensures the promotional discount is applied correctly. 20. Scenario. A sales rep reports that a product rule is preventing valid configurations. How would you troubleshoot this? Answer. To troubleshoot a product rule preventing valid configurations, would analyze its logic. I would review the product rule's conditions, for example, validation, selection, to identify restrictive settings, such as incorrect field values or dependencies. I would check the rule's evaluation event, for example, load, save, to ensure it triggers appropriately. In a sandbox, I would test the configuration to replicate the issue and adjust the rule's conditions. I would also verify the product setup in the product catalog for compatibility. After resolving the issue, I would document the fix and train sales representatives, ensuring valid configurations are allowed. 21. Curveball question. Scenario. During a critical sales demo, the CPQ system times out, delaying quote generation. How would you handle this under pressure? Answer. To handle a CPQ system timeout during a critical sales demo, I would act swiftly to maintain client confidence. I would check the quote line editor for error messages and review CPQ calculator logs to identify the cause, such as complex price rules or insufficient system resources. As a workaround, I would manually calculate the quote using predefined pricing data to keep the demo moving. I would then optimize calculations by enabling asynchronous processing or simplifying rules in a sandbox post-demo. I would communicate transparently with the client about the resolution plan, test the fix thoroughly, and monitor performance to prevent recurrence, ensuring a smooth sales process. 22. Scenario. A client wants to set up guided selling to recommend products based on customer needs. How would you configure this? Answer. To configure guided selling in Salesforce CPQ, I would create a user-friendly process to recommend products. A. Define questions. I would set up a series of questions in CPQ's guided selling feature to capture customer needs, for example, budget, use case. B. Configure product rules. I would create filter and selection rules to recommend products based on question responses. C. Test flow. I would test the guided selling flow in a sandbox to ensure accurate product recommendations. D. Customize UI. I would enhance the quote line editor with custom fields to display recommendations clearly. E. Train users. I would train sales representatives on using guided selling effectively. This ensures tailored product suggestions and improved sales efficiency. 23. Scenario. A client's renewal quote does not include a newly added product from an amendment. How would you ensure it is included? Answer. To ensure a renewal quote includes a newly added product from an amendment, I would address the synchronization issue. I would check the contract's renewal quoted status, as CPQ does not automatically update renewal quotes after amendments if this is set. I would manually update the renewal opportunity and quote to include the new product. To automate this, I would create a flow to sync amendments with renewal quotes. I would test the solution in a sandbox to validate accuracy. Post-deployment, I would monitor CPQ logs and train the team, ensuring all products are reflected in renewals. 24. Scenario. A client needs to support multidimensional quoting, MDQ, for complex subscriptions. How would you set this up? Answer. To set up multidimensional quoting, MDQ, for complex subscriptions in Salesforce CPQ, I would enable flexible pricing. A. Enable MDQ. I would activate MDQ in CPQ settings to support segmented subscription terms. B. Configure products. I would mark products as subscription-based and define segment-specific pricing in the product catalog. C. Set up price rules. I would create price rules to adjust pricing based on segment conditions, for example, term length, quantity. D. Test in sandbox. I would generate test MDQ quotes to validate segment pricing and calculations. E. Monitor logs. Would use CPQ logs to ensure accurate pricing. This setup supports complex subscription models with precision. 25. Scenario: a client wants to apply a buy one get one free promotion. How would you configure this in Salesforce CPQ? Answer: to configure a buy one get one free promotion in Salesforce CPQ, I would use price rules. A. Create price rule. I would define a price rule with a condition checking if the product quantity is at least 2, setting the second unit's price to 0. B. Link to product. I would associate the rule with the promotional product in the price book. C. Test promotion. Would create test quotes in a sandbox to validate the promotion's application. D. Add alert rule. I would configure an alert rule to notify sales representatives of the promotion. E. Monitor logs. Would use CPQ logs to ensure accurate calculations. This ensures the promotion is applied correctly and enhances sales. 26. Curveball question. Scenario: post-go live, a critical price rule fails, causing incorrect pricing, but the client demands immediate action. How would you resolve this without access to a developer? Answer: to resolve a failed price rule causing incorrect pricing without developer access, I would act quickly. I would review the price rule's conditions and actions in CPQ to identify errors, such as incorrect field references or logic. Using CPQ calculator logs, would trace the pricing calculation to pinpoint the issue. As a workaround, I would disable the faulty rule and apply manual pricing adjustments to maintain operations. In a sandbox, I would test corrected rule configurations and deploy them to production. I would communicate the resolution plan to the client and monitor post-deployment performance, ensuring accurate pricing and minimal disruption. 27. Scenario: a client wants to restrict a product option based on another selected feature. How would you configure this? Answer: to restrict a product option based on another selected feature in Salesforce CPQ, I would use option constraints. A. Define option constraint. I would create an option constraint in the product catalog, specifying that the restricted option is disabled if the controlling feature is selected. B. Set conditions. I would configure conditions to check the controlling feature's value in the quote line editor. C. Test in sandbox. I would test the constraint in a sandbox to ensure the option is correctly restricted. D. Add alert rule. I would create an alert rule to guide sales representatives on valid configurations. E. Monitor logs. Would use CPQ logs to verify constraint enforcement. This ensures accurate bundle configurations. 28. Scenario: a client needs to generate quotes with different tables for products from multiple families. How would you configure this? Answer: to generate quotes with different tables for products from multiple families in Salesforce CPQ, I would customize the quote template. A. Create template sections. I would define separate template sections for each product family in the quote template setup. B. Use dynamic conditions. I would apply dynamic conditions to display products based on their product family field. C. Test output. I would generate test quotes in a sandbox to validate table separation and formatting. D. Customize layout. I would use HTML or CSS to enhance table appearance if needed. E. Share template. I would share the template with users via permission sets. This ensures clear, organized quote documents. 29. Scenario: a client CPQ system is not syncing quote data with Salesforce opportunities correctly. How would you troubleshoot this? Answer: to troubleshoot CPQ quote data not syncing correctly with Salesforce opportunities, I would investigate the integration. I would verify the opportunity sync settings in CPQ, ensuring that sync with opportunity option is enabled. I would check for twin fields on quote line and opportunity product objects to ensure data consistency. Using CPQ logs, I would trace sync errors, such as mismatched field mappings. In a sandbox, I would test the sync process with sample quotes to replicate the issue. After resolving field or configuration issues, I would validate the sync and train users, ensuring seamless data flow. 30. Curveball question. Scenario: during hypercare, a client reports that a critical bundle configuration fails, but the issue is intermittent. How would you diagnose and resolve this without clear error logs? Answer: to diagnose an intermittent bundle configuration failure during hypercare without clear error logs, I would adopt a proactive approach. I would replicate the issue in a sandbox by creating quotes with similar bundle configurations, varying inputs to identify patterns. I would review product rules, option constraints, and price rules for potential race conditions or conflicting logic. To stabilize operations, I would simplify the bundle's rules temporarily. I would enable detailed CPQ logging to capture future occurrences and test fixes in a sandbox. After resolving the issue, I would document the solution and train the team, ensuring consistent bundle performance.
Please check description or comments section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your Salesforce jobs interviews like Salesforce LWC Developer jobs, Salesforce Technical Architect jobs, Salesforce Solution Architect jobs, Salesforce Service Cloud Consultant or Specialist jobs, Salesforce Test Engineer jobs, Salesforce DevOps Engineer jobs, Salesforce Marketing Cloud Developer or Consultant or Specialist jobs, Salesforce Admin jobs, Salesforce Developer jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based interview questions and answers, real-world problem-solving interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer, system design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section, these questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
For more exciting tips, tricks, and more importantly, for valuable insights of interviews, please share, like, and subscribe to my channel. It has a lot of valuable information about various insights of interviews. It has a wide range of real-world portfolio projects of various technologies for interviews, and it has wide range of most asked interview questions and answers of various technologies like data science, SAP, AWS, DevOps, and full-stack web development, and more. That will be useful during interviews. It has a wide range of most asked interview questions and answers and real-world portfolio projects of various technologies for freshers, for 2 to 3 years, experienced candidates, and for 5 or above years, experienced candidates to test their skills by knowing most asked interview questions and make themselves ready for interviews.